Admitting powerlessness over our problems is extremely difficult, and putting God at the forefront of our lives in the face of those problems is even more difficult still. Welcome to Breaking the Cycle. My name is Alan Hyde, and I'm your host. I ask you to join me as we unravel stories of recovery, shift perspectives, and inspire change in those who are seeking answers and solution. Let's get into it. Hey guys, today's reading comes from a book called As We Understood, and we're going to be reading just a quick little paragraph from this book. Layers and layers of bitterness, self-punishing guilt, self-righteousness, and self-loathing were slowly and painfully peeled off, and a person began to emerge. I've heard people in Al-Anon say they got back their self-worth. I had never had any in my life. So it was a whole new feeling to like the person called me. When I came into program, I had a pretty significant experience of a back and forth emotionally often in my life, where I would feel like the greatest thing ever. You know, I would feel really full of myself, but then I would also feel like the most worthless person on the face of the earth. And I would go back and forth between these feelings pretty often, especially in professional settings or in relationships with intimate partners. I would constantly feel like I was better than and less than. And I would go back and forth between those two emotional poles, if you will. And when I got into program, I connected with a sponsor, a guy who had, 30 years of program under his belt. And I asked him to guide me in my 12-step journey and he asked me to call him every day in the beginning. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna engage in this process. And I called him one day and I told him, like, yeah, I just don't get it, man. Sometimes I do things where I'll accomplish really wonderful things and I feel really special and I feel like things are going really well in my life. And then other times I get up and I feel like nobody cares, that I'm worthless and that nothing I do matters. And he told me a story that I'd like to share with you guys. He says, one day a young man wakes up and he calls his sponsor and he tells his sponsor, I feel like the greatest thing ever. And other times I feel like a worm. See, I feel really special, but I can't kick this feeling. I feel like I'm a worm. And the sponsor responded, maybe you're a really special worm. And I always get a kick out of that story because I think it's true. We're all just human. And through program and turning our lives over to a simple set of structures, we allow ourselves to build self-esteem. And I often talk about this in my clinical practices. Self-esteem is a slow and gradual process of building a foundation of believing in ourselves without getting too low and beating ourselves up, and not getting too high and believing too boldly in the things that, are out of our reach. And I think especially in our culture, we want to believe like, hey, shoot for the moon and you'll hit the stars. And I like those concepts too. And I'm not negating those concepts, that if you put effort in your life and work really hard, that good things will happen and you can accomplish some really amazing things. The foundation of self-esteem is more of the concept of, believe in yourself, but be humble about it. We don't go around and boast to people about how wonderful we are, because that's our ego. And our ego often gets us in trouble. How many times have you been around people that can't stop talking about themselves and how wonderful they are? And it's a huge turnoff, or you don't want to be around those people anymore. And part of the problem with that is we recognize it in ourselves. It's like if you've ever been in that situation where you're annoyed with somebody who's boasting about themselves, it's probably because you see in them parts of yourself that you don't want to see, right? Or that you don't want to be. And I know that's been true for me. I'm not saying that that's true for everybody, but a big thing I had to realize in the beginning of my recovery and healing journey was, if you spot it, you got it. So if I spotted someone who was irritating, oftentimes what I was seeing in them was a reflection of things either that I have done or was currently doing in my behaviors that I didn't like very much. And the same is true when you're around somebody who's constantly self-loathing. It's kind of like no matter how much you help, no matter how much you try to support them, they're just down, sad, and depressed, and it gets kind of taxing to be around them. It's like the reason it's taxing to be around them is because, well, you're not sure if people would support you in that way, right? You're not sure if people would accept you for those things. And so it becomes a burden. It becomes annoying. And I'm not saying that that's a perfect science, but psychologically, that is the underpinning of what occurs when we view people's behaviors and they become annoying. And program offers us a way to let go of that. In program, we call it detachment. How do I let go of someone else's behaviors and focus on cleaning up my side of the street? How do I continue to take care of myself, take responsibility for my actions, and truly acknowledge my feelings? And when we do that through structure with other people, we start to realize, number one, I'm not all that different. And that's encouraging, because if I'm not all that different, then there must be a solution for me. And if there's a solution for me, then that must mean that it's obtainable. That must mean that I can do it. And if I can do it, then that must mean I'll get better. And the reality is you will. And much like the little paragraph that we read today, and as we understood, those layers of self-loathing or self-righteousness start to melt away. They start to peel off. And the reason I think personally that was for me is because I didn't know what I was doing before. And I've said that a lot in these episodes. I was making it up as I went. And I was getting things done and I was accomplishing things, and that almost reinforced more the self-righteousness and the grandiosity in my mind of like, I'm making this up as I go and I'm still accomplishing really big things. Little did I know that that was a house of cards built on a faulty foundation, and that it was going to come crashing down anytime I felt challenged, or it was going to come crashing down anytime I felt like somebody didn't recognize the hard work that I put in, until I found program. And what I found in program is I was surrounded by people who had felt those exact same ways too. And I'll put it in one way that we talk about it in program that may be relatable to you guys. The reason for a lot of us that we bounce back and forth between feeling like grandiose and self-righteous and feeling less than or self-loathing is because we don't feel unconditional love from the people in our lives. And that originates for a lot of us out of the family disease of alcoholism and growing up with either alcoholic siblings or parents or extended family. It's a disease that impacts the family. And it's not the only thing that makes people feel that way, but it's a pretty significant one, especially in our culture. And if we're feeling that way, we need to be surrounded by people who hear us, who support us, who want us to be a part of their community. And then as we learn how good that feels, we carry that message. When someone comes in to our support groups, we offer a hand to that person. Let it begin with me. Let me be the person that reaches out and offers a handshake and a smile. Let me be the person who's of service to the next person who's still struggling. And when we do those things, and I know for myself, I can speak from personal experience, when I did those things, I started to build a foundation of self-esteem. I started to feel better about myself because I could look at my actions and I could see a good man. I could see a good person doing beneficial things in my community that people respected. And when I built that foundation, I didn't have to mess around with wondering if people liked me or wanted me around or wanted to spend time with me. The proof was in the pudding. You know, they wanted me around. They wanted me to be of service. They wanted to be of service to me, which with a foundation of self-esteem, one of the layers that peeled away was my ability to ask for help. I was no longer so self-righteous that I wouldn't ask people to help me when I was having a hard time. I would let people know where I was at and the things that I struggled with. And if I needed support, I asked. And when they asked me, I showed up. And the reason we do that is because we're a community. We care about each other. No questions asked. You need help, putting up the blinds in your house over your windows. I'm going to be there. I'll help you do that. You need help carrying and lifting something that's a little bit too heavy, or are you moving to a new place? I'm going to come help you move. You know, do you, do you need a little bit extra support in a phone call today and you reach out to me? I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to talk to you because I know you'd do the same for me. And when you're a part of that kind of community, is it any wonder that the layers start to peel away? Is it any wonder that we stop wondering if people like us or care about us or love us and want us around? And when those things start to happen, I'll promise you this, if you go down that path, you're gonna find a deeper connection with yourself, which is why I like that last line of the paragraph that says, I came to like the person called me. When I wake up in the morning now, I see in the mirror, I see a guy who puts recovery first. I see a guy who cares about his community. I see a guy first and foremost who cares about himself and takes responsibility for himself. And that feels really good. And then when I'm engaged in my recovery, I'm surrounded by people who are doing and feeling that same way. And you can see it on them. And so if you're listening to this and you think, hey, I'd like to be a part of a community like that. Well, I'll tell you this, it's full of really good people who you're really, really going to enjoy. And as scary as it can be to say, I need support, and as scarier even as it is to then go into those rooms, you're going to be surrounded by people who truly care about you and love you in a special way. And you owe it to yourself to experience that. If you're struggling out there, you owe it to yourself to come and be a part of our community. And I know I speak for myself, but on behalf of the people in these programs, we're going to accept you. We're going to welcome you in with open arms, and we're going to be there to wrap our arms around you. So if you liked the paragraph that we shared today, if you related to anything that I was sharing from my personal story, then I would encourage you to reach out. I would encourage you to go onto your computer, open up the internet, go to Google and search Al-Anon in my area, or search for a support group in your area, or search for a therapist in your area, and the support is going to be there. It's like I've said before in these episodes, if you look for the answers are going to find you. The people and the solutions are going to find you. That's all I got for you guys today. I hope you have a blessed day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of Breaking the Cycle. If you're looking for more information regarding the topics that I discuss in this podcast, jump over to alanhyde.com. The website will be in the description. If you're looking to get involved, make a donation, or to get your hands on some cool Breaking the Cycle merchandise, that will also be available at the website, and we encourage your support. Without your support, this podcast would not be possible. So I just want to thank you, and as always, bless your heart.